7:01, July 5th. This is the regular meeting of the Common Council, City of Oneonta. Call to order.
Mayor Brennan?
Here.
Councilmember Murphy? Councilmember Davies?
Here.
Councilmember Risberger? Councilmember LaCourse? Here. Councilmember Carson?
Here.
Councilmember Harrington?
Here.
Councilmember Falcon? Here.
All right, you join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance. And we have a presentation from our Housing Commission. But I'm going to flip things around a little bit because I see David Hayes here and I see Doug Brenner here. And you guys are walking that same lunar landscape that passed around as, I think, a photo trick.
Thank you, Gary.
So I'd like to give you guys the floor.
Briefly, we both came by to say thank you. Yesterday's events, and you were all present, went swimmingly well. These things don't happen by themselves. They do not happen in a vacuum. I'd like to clarify something. There's a misconception in the area that the city runs these things. If the city ran these things, you'd be on the hook for another 50 grand. We don't want that. The budget is constrained. We've got a hard-working board that actually rolls up its sleeves, like Doug Brenner, and we raise money and we make these things happen. But this would not have happened. This would not have happened without the city's involvement. I'm speaking specifically about fire, police, parks, the city clerk's office. All these departments came together to collaborate and make this thing a remarkable event. The newspaper of record for the heartland of New York State said we had excess of 10,000 people in the park yesterday. What we try to do as a board is bring neighbors together, to get them to talk to each other. We try to bring the community together. We try to have fun, basically non-alcoholics event where people can enjoy themselves. The parade, and you guys were there, and thank the council members who joined us, was in excess of 100 entries. The little kids, when I'm on Main Street, my head pivots back and forth like this. The little kids were just smiling, smiling, smiling. If the kids are happy, we've done our job. Largely, we've come here as a board to say thank you to the city of Oneonta for making this a remarkable celebration of community in the city. That's what I want to say.
I just want to say the same, to reiterate what Dave said when we were setting up on the 3rd, carrying tables around, we actually stopped and looked around and said, man, the park looks really nice. Everything was mowed, trimmed, everything looked really nice, and that just adds to the entire event and adds to the idea that we don't do it alone. It's a real collaborative effort. We appreciate everything everybody does to help so we can pull these things off for everyone who's here.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you, folks. You warm my heart. I'm going to open the floor to council members that attended. Might want to have something to say, or you didn't attend.
I just want to publicly say thank you to David and Doug. I know that you guys spent a lot of hours putting this all together. The fact that you had more than 100 participants inside the parade, it seemed like the parade was just going and going and going. It was great. Perfect day. A little bit of a sprinkle before it started, and then poof, all gone, and the sun popped out, and we were all complaining that it was hot. But luckily for me, John Brooks had a bottle of water, so I was all happy. But again, thank you very much for putting the time and effort. If no one's ever put a parade together, they have no idea how many hours of labor of love that it takes. So again, thank you very much.
It's a community celebration. That's what it's like.
So from everybody here and everybody in the city of Oneonta, 13,500 of us, thank you. Thank you very much.
The point is the city did its part. OPD, OFD, Parks Department, the clerk's office, everybody did their part. And this would not have happened without the city's collaboration. That's what we're here to say.
Happy to be partners. Thank you very much, guys. And I'm going to continue having flipped the script here and move into our petitioners and public hearings before we move into our housing commission report, if that's all right. And so I wonder, is there anyone here who's got something that they'd like to bring forward for the benefit of the community. And if you would just introduce yourself,
Yes.
tell us where you live and.
Hi, my name is Julie Nygren. Hi, David. I new to the area in the last year and a half. I'm from Staten Island, New York. I purchased a two-family home on 21 Grand Street. And Mayor Dernick was very gracious to already host me, and I aired my concerns, but I am going to continue to just look for some collaboration and anything I can do, because I found myself with a tenant who stopped paying rent, and worse than that, he has invited a drug dealer into my home, and a girlfriend who was having psychotic episodes. The OPD is cooperating and showing up when I need them to. I actually moved up here with my 23-year-old son who had a drug addiction. And so I have someone who's a former heroin dealer in my home, which, I'm frightened and horrified to be living in my home. My Ring cameras are going, I installed cameras, which I couldn't afford, and they're going off all night, and people are coming in and out, and I live in fear, that my son too could go downstairs and make a deal with them. It's a horrible situation. That townhouse inn has to go. Like I said, I'm from Staten Island, New York, and I've been through 10 years of trauma with my son and his addiction problems. I know a drug deal when I see one. I've seen the man in my home make a deal, ride on a bike, ride into the townhouse inn. I mean, it's very sad for this community, and I hope to join with, I'm very sad, another landlord across the street from me. She was supposed to come tonight. She just dealt with this last spring. She had a tenant also who stopped paying rent and started subletting rooms and collecting rent and allowing 12 or so drug-addicted people to move into the basement. They damaged her property. So I'm not sleeping at night. It's affecting my health. I'm a school teacher. I took a 10-month salary. I was planning on having rent coming in this summer and taking a part-time job. I'm now afraid to leave my premises. I'm the surveillance. You can be sure. I found out it's within my right. My cameras are surveying everything. And if I see something I don't like and I'm on my property, I'm allowed to snap a picture, and I don't put the camera in their faces, but I'm collecting, everything I can. I had a guy outside my window the other night, half dressed, poking around in my front lawn with another young woman who didn't look well. So it's incredibly nerve-wracking. I never imagined a situation like this. You've heard of squatters, but I never knew this could happen in your home. It took me by surprise, and it's a living hell. And I hope if there's anybody here who's a landlord, I would like. I'm outraged also to find out that it's all about tenants' rights. There's something wrong with this model. There are slumlords, and there are people who are very wealthy who have apartment buildings. I'm in my primary residence, not making ends meet, and I'm forced to live like this. There's very little protection. It's a civil case, and I just implore anybody here who wants to organize with me or has any ideas on the topic, let me know. Again, I'm Julie Nygren. Yeah.
Julie, as you know, my door is open. We'll continue to talk, I'm
Thank
sure.
you.
I really
appreciate what you've done.
I appreciate your speaking.
This-
David, is there something?
This may be an item for the Board of Public Service, it's a quasi-judicial body. They may be able to take the matter up as an agenda item. That's part of the purview, the city's Board of Public Service. They have enforcement rights, just as a suggestion.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you again. Yes.
Hi, my name is Arlene Nygren. I happen to be Julie's older sister, and I think it's wonderful that we gather here and we can voice our opinion, and I think it's great that we're praising the city of Oneonta. But we have to deal with reality. The world has changed. I left Staten Island in 1970. I went to Texas. I was a teacher and a coach down there. I brought teams to the state meet. I spent most of my working years at the Postal Service in Albany. I was a health and human resource specialist. I worked with the injured employees. I worked with postal inspectors. I know how they can interpret the law, and they work with state police. And my parents were first generation Scandinavians. They were Depression era, so I was raised respecting the law, honoring the law, and living by the law. And we knew our neighbors, we were cordial, and this whole world has changed. My partner and I of 30 years, she grew up in this town. We spent our working years in Albany, and we decided to retire here in Oneonta. She has 2 children here and grandchildren. And we're just appalled at the way Oneonta has deteriorated. I do not walk down Main Street a lot. I mean, I go to a couple restaurants and a bar, but I think it's just appalling that we allow such people to carry on. And in Julie's case, I worry for her, all right? I'm not sleeping either. And I'm saying if the law doesn't start getting busy, I'm 71, I don't have many more, I don't have the years I've have left that I've lived. So if I need to take the law in my own hand, these people are not gonna go to the cops. If I take a bat and whack their knees, grab them by the hair and throw them out, they're not gonna go to the cops because they're on parole, they're drug addicts, they're afraid of the police. But they're gonna be afraid of me too. I'm telling you, I'm on nice terms with them right now. I'm not starting any trouble. I wanna find this individual a home. I approached one woman. I said, how are you? I said, you don't look too good today. She says, oh, I'm fine. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, you look a little tired. I wanted to say you look really abused and misused, but I didn't dare. And I said, if you need help, I'll help you. And I told the individual, the gentleman, I said, I will take anyone up to social services. I'll help you fill out paperwork. I'll help you. These people, they're uneducated. They're in such a rut. It's really sad. But they don't have the means to help themselves. And a lot of people turn the other way. And I think if we want the city of Oneonta to be an outstanding place where people want to live here, we need to clean up the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we any other petitioners? Anyone else who's got something for the good of the board? Yes.
Yeah, Dave Hutchison, 2 Irving Place. I retired from the Environmental Board after about 19 years on it. Yeah, I'm interested in a petition that I don't know if it's been presented to you yet, but some of my friends, folks that meet down at the Green Earth at 8 o'clock in the morning, came up with, and the idea is to think about reintroducing the idea of using the Stella Luna restaurant, which is for sale, as a welcoming center and as a bus depot. And I called my representative, David Reisberg, who is not here at the moment, but he responded within an hour and said, yeah, this had been considered by council, the city before, but that they had an engineering study that implied that there just wouldn't be enough room for buses, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I spent the last couple of days walking around down there, all around, front, back, and around, and I would disagree. I talked to Judy Pegman today too, and I think she's been fantastic for the city. What a marvelous addition Judy's been. And but she said, yeah, we did consider it, and I know Steve Early wasn't here at that time, but if possible, I would like to see, and maybe others would like to see, the report from this firm that said it wouldn't have enough room. And you know, maybe I don't know, Greg, maybe they're kicking around the office somewhere. Do you know anything about it?
That's on the city website.
Pardon?
It's on the city website.
It is. So I could access it that way. Just
I
go.
could send you the link to it.
If it's handy, I'd appreciate that, and I could distribute that to other people that might be interested. Yeah, my last comment is they don't make them like that anymore. It's an 1892 building, probably comparable in age to the Armory. I don't know what the history of the Armory is, but you know, there's no way a building like that is ever going to be built again. And I just hope we might relook at the rationale behind that engineering report. May be valid, maybe we can't change it, but anyhow, so someday you'll get that petition, I guess.
Thank you, Dave. And just for everyone's edification, clarification, we will be, as a council, this council will be going through the details, step-by-step decisions to get to a place where we have a consensus, a majority, and hopefully the consensus of the community around what we're doing. So stay tuned, and yes, by all means, provide us with your input. Thank you very much.
If Carrie could keep us notified, I'd like to know if we can get a notice of the meeting. That'd be great if they're open meetings. Yeah.
And again, as you reached out to Councilman Risberger, those who know who their councilman or council member is or are, or may be. Here they are, and by all means, do
Yeah.
reach out to them.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anybody else that would like to speak before we move on to our Housing Commission report? No. Well, thank you very much for all of that, and it's much appreciated. Dave, Doug, thank you very much. And we'll move on to our presentation, the Housing Commission's Senior Housing Work Group. And who is speaking for the Housing Commission? Do we have somebody from the Senior Housing Work Group to speak? Is there anybody speaking from the Housing Work Group? Do we have? Here? No? I think we may have crossed the signal then. It's all right. Easily remedied. We have additional council meetings. Stay tuned. When you're... Okay, all right. Well, we're going to then move on from our presentation. We'll look to see if we can have that scheduled for the next time we get together, and that would be on the, I believe, 18th. So we'll reach out and look forward to that. And then we'll move now into boards and commission reports. Councilmember Risberger is not with us tonight. So in terms of... Oh, wonderful. That's great. So Councilmember Davies with the Planning Commission report. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I jumped on all life infrastructure, so I'll
Okay, all right. That works. All right. Well, maybe I'm just going to hold you to it. All right, so we'll hear more about what happened with the Planning Commission. Again, you want to be here for this next meeting because it's going to be your The Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals would typically have been our 7th Ward council member who we now would have that seat empty, and we don't actually have somebody who's currently a liaison to that, and so I don't believe we have anybody who's able to report on that. I have the minutes. I do have the minutes. So I can tell you that here's what happened. There was a motion made by Vice Chair Montanti and seconded by Commissioner Kendall, zoning board approval. I could probably have read this before I read that out loud. They approved the minutes, guys. New business, Lauren Stephenson at 53 Spruce Street in Oneonta. Property address 77 Hudson Street. The applicant proposes the use of above noted property as a short-term rental. The applicant was not able to be in attendance and contact the city clerk's office prior to the meeting to inquire if the board would be willing to table her application so that she could be present. Following a brief discussion, the following motion was offered and approved. The motion was made by Commissioner Zanowitz and seconded by Vice Chair Montanti that the Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals tables this application to the August 23rd meeting. So you want to tune in for that one as well. And there was another motion for Donald and Melody Marsh, 75 Chestnut Street. The applicant proposed the installation of additional directory signage at the above noted property. There was no one in attendance to represent the property. Following a brief discussion, the following motion was offered and approved, made by Commissioner Zanowitz and seconded that the application will be tabled until the August 23rd meeting. So again, you'll want to be there for that. All right, so it's the summer. It's summertime. All right, moving on to the Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights. We do have Council Member Lori Shu here.
Yes. So the Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights met on June 29th, which was a Thursday. Sorry, I was trying to decide if we had a quorum or not, but I can't do that math in my head. So briefly, we discussed this. We did? Oh, excellent. We discussed the status of the commission. One of our former commissioners has moved, Reverend Marty Swords-Rell. We wish her well. One of the commission members who was appointed and has signed the book has not attended a meeting since their appointment in January, so we discussed what we might be able to do about that. We moved on to discussion of the Trailblazer Award, general, discussion of what we want the award to be. Can we, define the scope and, how it's going to look moving forward, how many members or how many awardees there might be. There was some discussion of contacting previous winners to ask, what the significance of the award was to them in order to guide that process forward. And then also how can we make it more accessible to get more applicants and making that more prominent. So I think that there will be increased marketing of that going forward. That was it. Next meeting, July 25th, which is a Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the council? No? We will move on, but we won't move away from you, Councilmember Lacroix. We'll ask about the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Okay, Parks met on Monday, July 3rd. Our meeting was very concise. The pool opened on Saturday after some water quality issues. So far, so good. Movie night had to be canceled because of the air quality. There was a backup date from the original date, but the air quality was also not good on the backup date. So we're going to try to find another date to show that movie, which is Soul, which is a great movie, fan favorite in my house. So be there if you can. Keep an eye out. We had general discussion of the air quality concerns and how the AQI will impact summer events. Events have to be canceled or rescheduled for AQI over 150. Parks Administrator Lansing has begun holding meetings with all large event hosts. She'll be doing that going forward to smooth out peaks ahead of the event. She did that with the Hometown 4th of July and said that, it was great to get a lot of things kind of out of the way. Hartwick will use Field 4 for their club level softball in this fall and spring. We discussed an update on the lower basketball court in Wilbur Park, lower Wilbur Park basketball court. After a commissioner asked for an update on the upper basketball court resurfacing, so I told them what I knew about that in terms of timeline and funding. The Parks and Rec Commission recommends using that space for pickleball, the lower basketball court, once the court is repurposed, and repurposing the poles that are there for the backboards and rims for shade structures, which would also keep tree droppings off the court, which was part of the problem with that court in the first place. Parks Administrator Lansing is also working with Parkitects, which is a playground firm, to looking into making the structures in Wilbur Park Playground accessible. What she found out basically is that the surface is what keeps the playground from being ADA compliant. So yeah, she's looking into that more and we'll have some recommendations in the future. She did also recommend that we add Foursquare to the playground area on a rubberized surface. The lower Wilbur court is too hard for that kind of play. There was also a question from the commission about the Wilbur Park master plan. I know that went to the Quality of Life Committee. They were just wondering where we are in that process. And then actually I had a question that I can ask via email, which is about restrooms in Wilbur Park.
So I have a question.
Okay.
And then open it to the rest of the
Oh,
council.
sorry. Next meeting,
okay.
August 7th at 7 p.m.
Okay. The lower basketball court,
Mm-hmm.
from which we're going to be removing our stanchions and our basketball backboards and nets once the upper court is ready to go. I was under the impression that that was the court that we were going to be turning into, in fact, you guys remember my visits to the elementary schools.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that's what we were going to be doing with that, creating a space for young children, or children,
Yeah.
whatever their age, to play on something that essentially has a painted surface that Foursquare you mentioned, and hopscotch apparently is really a thing, and maze and other types of things that they were looking for. Is that no longer? Are we looking at pickleball there?
Two things. So the poles are in concrete, so
Yeah.
they can't be removed without destroying the surface.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing is the Parks Administrator mentioned that, basically the recommendation is pickleball pickleball. The neighbors who have the concerns about the noise mentioned that pickleball would be an acceptable substitute, if I'm remembering that correctly. The Parks Administrator mentioned that she hadn't been involved in discussions with regards to like making it, like, the new purpose of the open space.
The last thing I'll say is I know I sent around an article, I think it appeared in the New York Times, I believe it did, to some folks. I think you might have been in that email chain. I gifted, it must have been the New York Times. They require you to gift it. The numbers of municipalities that are dealing with the very same sort of complaints around pickleball because they're
Yes.
and it's very popular and it's incessant. So that's been taken into consideration?
Well, during the course of those very long and kind of drawn out conversations around that court, that was something that was brought up. But I think ended up, I would defer because the residents seemed satisfied with pickleball as an alternative.
Residents representing one home, just
Oh, that's
to
true.
clarify that.
That's true.
There were other residents in the area that were the ones that advocated for the family play
Gotcha.
from the very start.
Okay, yeah, so maybe there's more.
I would suggest that maybe
Discussion.
an audio recording of pickleball being played in Newa Park might be something to share with some of the neighbors.
I think it's been there in the past, I think they're well aware of the sound, so I think folks might have very using that, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, let me find out.
Let's open to council now. Anybody? Yes, Lynn.
So along the pickleball line, are we over the capacity of the courts that are down there in Newa Park? Because I've talked to a couple of friends and they said there's times where you will wait to get into play.
Yeah.
And they're like subdividing and trying to figure out better ways of doing it. I guess there's an app that they're all using.
That's great. Yeah,
So our pickleball courts have really taken off.
Yeah, the feedback from the Parks Administrator, and I hope that I'm representing this appropriately, is that basically that like pickleball is on fire and you can't that you kind of can't have too many courts at this point. Maybe eventually, maybe that's short-sighted, but yeah, it's very popular. There's like never a time where those pickleball courts are done.
So is that something that commission is looking at, future planning, rather than, I just don't want the Wilbur Park to be a knee-jerk reaction, that's all.
Well, I think it has more to do, again, summarizing the conversation, I think it has more to do with providing that option in a different area of town, you know what I mean? And the fact that the ones in Newa Park are so popular that, that more courts would be a benefit to the community. And they are like the appropriate surface for that, so. You could do 2 pickleball courts on the one tennis/basketball court. Yeah.
Anything else from council? Anything else from council? We don't typically open it up to commissioners. Sorry.
I'm a pickleball player along with Greg's father, so I was going to comment on the number
In
of
this,
players.
in this particular instance, I'm opening the
Understand.
floor just to you.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go for it, Bob.
well, yeah, this morning when I left at 9:30, there were 37 people there. And there's 8 courts, so we got 32. There's always a waiting list. My take on it is that the first thing in the morning, 8:30 on, is your busy time. I don't know about the afternoons. I think it peters off, so I'm not sure an expansion of pickleball is out there. I mean, I don't know, but it'd be something to watch in the afternoons.
Just rumor was the town of Oneonta was going to put one up in Fortin Park too. So
Oh, cool.
And I
Yeah.
know Rose Avenue, there's the tennis court there, that they're actually making that some kind of a living off of that too.
Cool. Yeah, and it may be worth, that's the recommendation from the commission at this point, but I think you raise a good point of, are we looking at, do we have the appropriate number of pickleball courts for the size of our community, and is that something we need to invest in? I don't know. I'm just reporting.
Nice.
Moving the important thing is we've gotten the Daily Star headline for tomorrow. So moving on then, if there's any other comments or questions for member or issue on the Parks and Rec report? No, thank you very much, Katie. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Moving on to our quality of life and infrastructure report, and I know that we have a volunteer. Councilmember Davies?
Finally, the rec report. So yes, the quality of life and infrastructure committee met Monday, June 26th, 2023. And we discussed the deer management proposal. There were some changes and alters, and the deer management task force made some recommendations for some of the changed language, which we did. I think you all have received a copy of that. We also discussed the Newa Park 5K race course. Councilmember Risberger had reached out to someone from Achilles International, which is wheelchair racing, and they had a little concern about the 8-foot wide pathways, but felt that it could be a very doable course as long as wheelchair racers went before regular racers, leaving them with the course all to themselves, if you will, without needing to pass runners. We approved that, and I believe it's on tonight's, right?
Last page.
We also discussed the Deet Street closure for a welcome event, and made some recommendations that we thought would make the closure safer for pedestrians, and that was also approved and moved up, and I believe on tonight as well. Mill Street closure for a block party, we discussed that. We discussed that the host would drop off letters to neighbors if passed, and they would agree that there should be some streamlined process for future block party discussions and requests. So we'll discuss at a future meeting that part of it, but the overall Mill Street closure was approved, and I think also tonight on the agenda. We also discussed the Park Pavilion alcohol permit policy. The staff recommended including a deposit of $500 and keeping the permit fee of $25. $500 will be kept if damage to the area or if cleanup is needed beyond what's reasonable. If deposit is not to be returned due to damage or excessive cleanup, if there are noise complaints, permit holder will be banned from future pavilion rentals. That was approved and moved forward to finance. And then lastly, we discussed school zones, and there was some talk about the school zone around Greater Plains in terms of expanding that. And we were looking at doing a speed study there. And then there was also conversation about State Street and Hazel Street in the school zone, as well as adding some oncoming traffic does not stop to State Street to reference Hickey Street, so that folks know that there is no stop sign at the corner of Hickey and State. And since that meeting, that signage has been added, and that was it.
Good.
Can I just say, I love, my son goes to Monkey, and there have been, I don't know if I should admit this publicly, a couple times where I've like stopped and then gone, and someone has been coming, and I've been like, oh my gosh, they don't have a stop sign, and I freak out. So those signs that say this traffic coming from, it's either left or right, depending on which side of the street you're on, are such a lifesaver. I just think that was a really great addition, so thank you for doing that from this mom.
We can't take credit for that. That was a resident of the city who was at the meeting in attendance and made that recommendation.
Oh, cool.
And
The ideal.
Yeah.
right, and so Greg and his staff backed it on, and I do think it's been a really great solution.
Further questions or comments from the council? Thank you very much for the report. And with that, we move back to Cory Shu and our
Yeah.
Finance and Human Resources Committee report.
Okay. Finance also met on June 29th, which was a Thursday. We had Norma Slauson and Helen Reese from the, I didn't write down what their group was actually called, but they're the Sport Wilcox people. They came and discussed the barn project, which we are going to talk about at the end of the agenda. Motion, well, it's not a motion. Item 17. So I'll share some information at that time. We discussed, and I believe that's on here, and I'm sorry I didn't match up ahead of time, but, oh yeah, motion 13, a budget amendment with regard to installing some deer fencing around the new Sport Wilcox orchard. So that's on the agenda. We were given a staffing update by the city administrator. 88% of our full-time budgeted positions are filled. 73% of our budgeted part-time positions and 78% of our budgeted seasonal positions are filled. We have a couple of appointments on the agenda. One of them is a transfer. This is motion number 7. This is someone who brings 6 years of experience in the role. And so for that reason, we're going to be extending a few benefits to that person. We discussed a Gardner Place reconstruction change order. That total project came in under budget and ahead of schedule, on schedule, close enough, on schedule. The OPT contracts you'll also see on your agenda. Those are 8, 9, and 10, I think. If you have any questions about those, I can answer those. We got an update on an RFQ consultant selection process for engineering services for the water treatment plant and distribution systems. That was just like an FYI item, so we'll have more information on that in the future. We have a DPW truck. Is that on? I'm so sorry that I didn't match these up ahead of time. I wish I did. Len was always very prepared with that. I aspire to that. Truck number 375. We are going to replace it for a total of $259,000. We need a budget modification. The budget was $240,000 from the highway reserve, and $19,000 will have to come from the general fund contingency. This dump truck has everything. It has a plow. It has a brine system. It's going to be awesome. We discussed the fee schedule. Nobody got that. Does anyone watch Saturday Night Live? Okay. So, motion number 16 is on the discussion agenda. As Councilmember Davies mentioned, there are a couple of modifications to the fee schedule. We'll discuss those later on. There's a donation. I did see that on the agenda for motion number 3. Donation for posters to be restricted to the Engagement Marketing Committee. There is a motion on here to accept the $50,000, motion number 12, from the county from their ARPA funding. I don't know that I'm going to explain this appropriately, but we have to formally accept the money, if that makes sense. And then we did hear just a little bit from our DPW director about a potential revenue generation item, but it's very beginning stages, so that's all I have to share at this time. That's everything we need. We have I think we ended up at P.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll open it up to council for questions or comments. Again, Len, we'll start with Len. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, we'll start with Len. Go ahead.
He was like looking at me.
You know where I'm going with my keys, you know.
So
You might ask the same question.
Might be.
Motion 8 and 9 on the contracts. They're covering all our costs for the slight increase this time, or?
Nope. So, actually, Craig, do you want to speak about that, or do you want me to?
If you want to take a stab at it, you can.
So, I can take a stab at it. You let me know. All right. So, Simeone Yanta's contract has historically been $285,000 annually. Their contract is going to be for $255,500 this year, and we're going to use $30,000 CARES funding in order to make up the difference. That's funding that we have banked away in order to cover it. It costs $466,000 to run the route, but we get funding back from, I'm not sure where that's from.
For STOA, there's mileage and
Fair reimbursement, yes. So the difference is the $285. Hartwick, same thing. Historically $40,000 annually, it's gonna be $30,000 this year with 10,000 CARES funding. Hillside was an increase. Hillside went from 97,000 to 100,800 for the 23-24 year, and 103,200 for the 24-25 year.
So in essence, we're looking at the decrease in ridership because of the decrease in the student population. Is that what the thought process was?
Yes.
Thank you. We're not at a critical point yet with that ridership, correct? Given the document that was handed out last common council meeting showing the ridership decrease, but we're not at the critical mass point with our stow.
Right, there's no cost for one.
Okay.
Yeah, and basically, Dave Hoteling mentioned that, you know, if we were going to cut routes or runs, it would be like the late night, you know, and those are really of a benefit to our neighborhoods. So it really kind of behooves us to keep those going. Yeah.
Councilmember Falco, you have something?
Yes, I was, thank you. I was kind of curious about the fence around the Swart Wilcox orchard, and if you could maybe explain where the funding for that is coming from and the reasons for putting up the $20,000 fence around trees. Is it a new?
So the fence is $9,900 estimated.
Okay.
The orchard is new. It was put in, the trees were funded by the planting trees after ash loss grant.
Okay.
It was grant. And so basically we just planted all these trees and there's some deer damage. And so DPW had put up like orange construction fence and that kind of is keeping them away, but it doesn't look great. So we were going to put up a fence that looks nice and would be permanent. It would match the community garden fence, right? I'm remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, and the funding is coming from the Sport Wilcox Fund, right? Which is specifically for, I'm sorry, I'm just testing my memory
No,
right
that's
now.
great.
Which is why I keep looking at James, he knows, and I'm just trying to remember, so. Thank you, so,
Okay.
yeah, so it would come from the Sport Wilcox Fund.
Okay, great. That
Yes.
answered my question.
Okay.
So thank you.
And just to clarify, it's not 20,000. It's a little confusing where the motion says increase 10,000, increase 10,000.
Yeah.
It's a revenue and a appropriation, so it's $10,000 that we're making available for the estimated
you.
$9,900 project.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that clarifies it for me. Okay, thanks. That was it.
Any other questions? Okay. Very good, thank you. And we'll move on now to the city administrator's report. Nah. We're not gonna do the city administrator's.
I'll take questions tonight. I don't have a formal report prepared.
Well, that's fine. If someone's got a question for the city administrator right now, this is a time that we can do that. Otherwise, we'll move on to the mayor's remarks. Yes?
Did you and the city staff get together and do a post-action report for the 4th of July? Was there anything that stood out?
I've not done that, no.
I can tell you from the 5th Ward perspective, I was riding my bicycle home last night after we had the fireworks in Newa Park, and somebody in the rail yards
Quite a show.
had quite a show. It was high-end fireworks. I did notify the police chief over it. I know that some officers were involved trying to track down the individual or individuals that were lighting them off. It is a safety issue. These are fireworks that I would estimate went 100, 200 feet up in the air. And so without proper permitting, just want to let the general public know that it is against the law without proper permit. So curious to see what the final police report is on this.
I can look into that. I did speak with the police chief and the fire chief today regarding the 4th of July event, the official one, and heard that there were no major issues. It went really as well as they could have expected. But I did not talk with them about that incident.
Thank you.
Sure.
Scott?
Yeah, I just want to let the public know that Greg and Chris Yakibuchi and his team have With the road construction down on River Street, they are well aware of the ongoing issues of the potholes that develop. They have been on the contractors, calling them. They've called them in over the weekend. Chris Yakubuchi called in DPW crew over the weekend to help try to solve some of the issues. So we are working at it. I say we, but the city, and keeping the pressure on with the contractor to try to limit the inconvenience the best as possible. We all know there's inconvenience with the road construction, but you know, it's hasn't been the best start, but I think we'll, with Chris and Greg, and we'll get there.
Yeah, I know DPW met with the contractor today, talked through some actions that can be taken to help mitigate those issues going forward, so we'll definitely stay on top of that. It's a busy road, there's a lot of traffic for a project like that. There's gonna be some issues like this, but you know, keep the communication going and we'll work through them as we go.
And I think Chris and Greg are getting tired of hearing from me at this point, either by phone or email, so.
It is,
If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in Francis 645, isn't it?
it's a very busy intersection.
Yeah, we appreciate hearing feedback.
Any other questions for Greg, as long as he's...
And then the Main Street closing for the water and gas lines for Springbrook. Are we anticipating staying within that time period that was listed, or?
That one I'll have to follow up with DPW on. I don't know any more than what's been shared.
Okay. All right, my remarks are short, but I think sweet. We recently closed our parking garage. This may not be news to everybody. So that's lemons, and we've been making lemonade, and I'm really happy about the circumstance of how that's come about. So Joe Timming, who is, I moved Joe out of what would have been his office. It's now the mayor's office, and he's over at the Brenner building next to the pond, and takes the shuttle. We run a shuttle every 10 minutes, rolls through the park and into downtown, and then back down Market Street and back into the park. And Joe takes that shuttle regularly. It's come to be called actually Joe's Limousine service. Apparently, Joe has access to a sticker maker of some sort, or a printer that will print on stickers, and he took it upon himself. He loves the shuttle, and he took it upon himself to create a sheet of stickers. So he's got these stickers that he created. And I saw Dave Hoteling, who was ecstatic about it, how nice to have a staff member not in his department, just, you know, a fellow member of the city staff say, hey, I've got something that, you know, I want to share, and I'll give you all these little stickers. You can hand them to people when they take a ride on the shuttle, which is great. But then the marketer in me started thinking about how we could use that to our advantage. We are absolutely thrilled to have the relationship that we have with Cooperstown All-Star Village, where we have a pop-up tent, you know, and a really nice presence. I talked to Ellen Telephone, the mayor of Cooperstown. She can't get a brochure into the Dreams Park, but we have a presence that's fairly significant on opening day every week at the Cooperstown All-Star Village. And so we're enlisting them to come on into the city of Oneonta, and in fact, take advantage of park and ride. Free park, free ride. That sounds really good to folks. They don't have any concern about the fact that, you know, there's no longer a parking garage, or that we may have some issues in terms of finding parking. In fact, that was the case. So they're excited about that, but there is a great target market. So I've recently gotten with all of the actually every single one of the retailers and restaurants this past Saturday, and enlisted them to create specials for folks that have these stickers. So here are the stickers, as I showed you, and those, I think we've got about 24 right now, and I expect when I go around and explain to people that I have to have a list, there'll be more. These will go in the windows of, they say, shuttle riders. Show us your stickers. We'll have specials for you, and then we'll give them these various retailers and restaurants a sheet that's branded appropriately, that they can write what their specials are. So that as they come up to the register, or however they want to display them, they'll be able to take advantage of specials, and these retailers and restaurants can change them out and make them, kind of what's moving, what's not moving, and kind of have some ownership of the thing. We've got a couple of months left with the Cooperstown All-Star Village and those thousands of folks. And because Joe Temming thought, not only do I love the shuttle, but I want to celebrate that shuttle with stickers, that I apparently have access to a sticker printer. We now have something that I think is absolutely going to be very popular lemonade, made from our limits. So I just want to thank Joe, and I want to thank the city staff that's been so collaborative around this type of thing. That's how we get things done, people working together like that. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I'm excited about it. We actually have a brochure that's at the printers right now that I modified. I've modified just a little bit to let them know. I had a blank space that I could use. I let them know that they had this opportunity to take advantage of this, and there'll be on that bus, on that shuttle, there'll be an updated sheet of all the participating restaurants and retailers. So I suspect that people will have even a better summer than they might have had. And I think some folks are having a pretty good summer. So anyway, that is the mayor's remarks, such as they are. Moving on to the consent agenda. See you again. All right. Motion number 1, that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held June 20th, 2023. Motion number 2, that the Common Council approves the minutes of the emergency meeting held June 29th, 2023. Motion number 3, that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $386,488.26, and the same to be placed on the Director of Finance desk for payment as presented. Motion number 3, that the Common Council authorizes the Director of Finance to accept a donation in the amount of $250 from an anonymous donor to be restricted for the creation of posters for the Engagement Marketing Committee, and further authorizes any necessary budget amendments for said acceptance. Motion number 4, that the Common Council approves the City Administrator's appointment of Joseph Muscolo to the position of maintenance worker effective July 6, 2023, at a base annual salary of $31,127, CSEA grade 4. This appointment is subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Motion number 5, that the Common Council approves the City Administrator's appointment of James Rickman to the position of wastewater treatment plant operator trainee effective July 6, 2023, at a base annual salary of $32,402, CSEA grade 6. This appointment is subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Motion number 6, that the Common Council approves the City Administrator's appointment of Aaron Van Alsing to the position of water treatment plant operator trainee effective July 12, 2023, at a base annual salary of $32,402, CSEA grade 6. This appointment is subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Motion number 7, that the Common Council appoints Alicia Slack to the position of police officer at a base annual salary of $67,000 PPA rate after 6 years, effective July 6, 2023, as well as being eligible for 3 weeks of vacation leave upon hiring, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Motion number 8, that the Common Council authorizes the City Administrator to enter into an agreement with Harvard College for the continued provision of Oneonta Public Transit bus services for the periods of August 1, 2023 through May 31, 2024, and August 1, 2024 through May 31, 2025, with an annual charge of $30,000. This item is subject to review by the City Attorney. Motion number 9, that the Common Council authorize the City Administrator to enter into an agreement with the Hillside Commons Oneonta LLC for the continued provision of Oneonta Public Transit bus service for the period of August 1, 2023 through July 31, 2025, with an annual charge of $100,800 for 2023 through 2024, and an annual charge of $103,200 for 2024 through 2025. This item is subject to review by the City Attorney. Motion number 10, that the Common Council authorizes the city administrator to enter into an agreement with the Student Association of the State University College at Oneonta, New York, for the continued provision of Oneonta Public Transit bus service for the periods of August 1, 2023 through May 31, 2024, and August 1, 2024 through May 31, 2025, with an annual charge of $255,500. This item is subject to review by the city attorney. Motion number 11, that pursuant to the provisions of general municipal law of the state of New York, the Common Council approves expenditures of $240,000 from the General Fund Highway Equipment Reserve to be used toward the purchase of a 2024 International HV 507 SFA 4x2 with plow body brine system from Allegiance Trucks Liverpool, New York, pursuant to the state's joint procurement program to utilize the County of Onondaga's procurement contract 010914. The council further authorizes a budget transfer in the amount of $19,621 from the general fund contingency to fund the full purchase price of $259,620.90. Motion number 12, that the Common Council approves the acceptance of $50,000 of American Rescue Plan Act, that's ARPA, funds from the County of Otsego to be used in accordance with the application submitted and approved by the county for improvements in Wilbur Park, and the council further authorizes its creation of the capital project budget in the amount of $50,000 for said project, and the council further authorizes the necessary budget transfers and amendments. Motion number 13, that the Common Council approves the following budget amendments for the installation of a fence around the Swart Wilcox Apple Orchard. Increase CM02.7520.464, purchase services, $10,000. Increase CM02.0511.0, appropriated reserves, $10,000. With that, we end that portion of the agenda, the consent. Do we have any items to pull?
Number 10, please.
Number 10. Yeah, I put that too. Any others? Okay. With that, call roll. No. Do I have a motion to approve? Len? Followed by Katie. Thank you. Testing you. You passed. All right. With that, call roll.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFredo?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Aye.
All right. Now, moving to motion number 10. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, followed by Katie, and it's all yours.
Simply this, as an employee of SUNY Oneonta and the role that I have, I'm considered a policymaker, and I cannot vote on anything that has to do with SUNY Oneonta and contracts, so therefore I'll have to abstain.
Okay, there's that. And what I caught was, isn't the name now, do we have college in the name? Or are we simply the State University at Oneonta?
It's State University of Oneonta, and I believe that's what it is now.
And I think we pulled the word college out.
So because doing the math in my head, can I make a suggestion that we table this until the next meeting?
We have 5, if we have 6 here, right?
Yep.
No, you have 5.
I have 5.
Yeah.
So if Mark can't vote, presuming we all vote the same way, there's
Right.
still, you would have to
Still
appoint
vote.
the exact.
You can't.
I don't think I can do that.
This is
No.
not as high.
No.
Oh.
Kind of the full complement of the council, 4 and 4.
How badly does this mess us up to push it back?
I think it'll be okay to push it to the next council meeting, I think August 1st is when it starts, so.
Okay.
All right. So, do I need a motion to table? I assume I do.
I already made the motion to table.
All right, second. Required? No, yeah, it's required. And then that's it, right? You have to vote.
Who's my second?
I'll
I heard a
And-
motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
And then with that, we'll,
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFredo?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
all right. Then now moving on to the discussion agenda, motion number 14, that the Common Council approves the implementation of the Deer Management Program as presented, which provides guidance for a 3-phase approach to address the impact of deer on the city of Oneonta. This item is subject to review by the city attorney. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, followed by Davies, and discussion. Do we have any discussion?
I think 3 of us discussed this to death, so.
Yeah.
I guess we're fairly well represented. Well, in that case, we'll take vote the roll.
Councilmember Davies?
I'm sorry, did you go straight to me? Yes.
Yes. You're first. Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
And just a note, spent some time during the parade with 3 former mayors, and one of those mayors, the earliest in the bunch, had tried to get that started 25 years ago, and very impressed and very happy to say that we've got this kind of progress being made. Thank you to everyone who's been involved in that. Motion number 15, that the common council approves the 2023 event and street closure application by Laura Carpenter for the Miller Street Block Party event to be held on Miller Street between River Street and Henry Street on August 5th, 2023, as presented. The common council further authorizes the city administrator to make any necessary permit modifications based on future planning meetings with city staff and the applicant. Do I have, so I've got Katie followed by Mark, and discussion. Again, the value of having 3 people in that meeting. So we'll move on to the vote.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco? Aye.
Wonderful. We move on to motion number 16, that the common council approves an amendment to the 2023 fee schedule for the addition of fees administered by the city clerk as follows. Special applications, alcohol permit, park deposit. A $500 deposit is required for all alcohol permits. Parks, recreation, and public space usage. Honorary street name dedication / dedication, $300. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, followed by Mark. And discussion?
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
No, you please.
Please.
Now you.
I choose you, Emily, go ahead.
About the alcohol permit deposit, I'm just kind of curious, about what the procedure is going to be for a checkup on whether or not the premises is clean. It's a pretty big deposit. I mean, I understand the reason why, but it's a large amount of money, and there's a chance that if someone has a party and then other people come back and party in that space, and then in the morning, if that's when the checkup happens, that person might not be refunded their deposit even if they did clean up. So how are we gonna ensure that we're checking up on that particular event? Who's going to inspect that space?
I believe we had that discussion, and it was to the time stamping of our pictures off our phones. So that individual that's named on the application for the permit said that they're cleaning it up. They will take pictures of the area that they had rented or
Okay.
permitted for, and that's time-stamped pictures.
Okay,
Right, that's what we had discussed.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
Should solve that issue.
Yeah, we solved
And
that
then,
issue.
how do they submit that? They email it then to city clerk or?
They can email it to us, or I guess they usually phone if they feel more comfortable, they can text it to the phone.
Oh,
But we'll make sure to have it around.
okay, I think that's a very great solution.
And embedded in that, just in the back end of all of that, will be that information, so not even changeable.
Right.
Terrific. Other questions or comments on this? Any
That was
further
one of
discussion?
my questions. The other one is, I know that there was some, just like trying to figure out how we were gonna take a deposit, and I obviously figured it out, but just for my curiosity, I kind of figured what the solution was.
They are going to provide us with a check.
Okay.
At the time of reservation, it will be held in our vault, and then it will be returned to them if there is no damage.
Okay. Cool.
Uh-oh. Apparently that's not what we're doing.
Well, we can talk about the
Okay.
implementation of it, but the check could be stopped. Maybe someone could write you a check and then put a stop order on the check and then have their party and then you'd be SOL. It might be wise to, well, again, you know what, I don't wanna have to take anybody to the small claims court who took it out, who's
It costs us more than $500.
place not nearby Oneonta. I would suggest that what we do is either take a credit and print it or cash the check and make sure that it's clear before we do it, and then issue a check. And the Chamberlain's office may not like that as much, but I will like it much more.
It's our office that'll collect it, so
Yeah.
that's our headache.
So those details will be worked out.
Yes.
Obviously. So further discussion on this?
Okay.
You're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll call the vote.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Partnership?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco? Aye.
Okay, now we move into a general discussion of that Swart Wilcox Barn project, and looking around, and I'm thinking it's probably you, Rick. Is it?
I can just,
Talk about it.
sure,
Okay.
I can just say that, you know, we have kind of brought up the barn project on the Swart Wilcox property before. An individual made a donation, which we haven't been able to take them up on yet, but of a barn, a historic barn that's located on their property, which kind of got the conversation going with the Swart Wilcox group. They are a New York State museum and or chartered museum, and currently they don't have any like document storage. Things are stored, historic documents, historic, you know, artifacts are stored on the second floor of their unclimate controlled, the house itself. So they're really keen on having a barn brought to the property or built on the property, so that they can, you know, store things properly, but also have a meeting space, and, you know, be able to host their programs inside if there's, you know, weather. So, we recently approved, engineering, sorry, no, question timeline. We recently approved engineering, to kind of investigate this project. They have come back with like a high level estimate. I'll let you talk now.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. The cost estimate for the total project would be $572,000 plus, obviously, depending on future increases. The Friends of Swart Wilcox intends or suggests to do the project in 2 phases. The first phase, they're saying, would be around $334,000. The second phase being $332,000. The first phase would include the basic site preparation, including building a concrete foundation for the barn, which did you mention that they have a donor of a barn, an existing barn that would need to be dismantled, relocated, and rebuilt on the site, if that's indeed feasible. This estimate, the cost estimate, would also include, for the same amount of money, building a new barn if that was deemed necessary. So the basically initial construction of the shell of a barn would be that first phase, $334,000. Phase 2 would complete the interior, finishing and adding utilities, HVAC, electric, that sort of thing, for $232,000. Their next step, this Friends of Swart Wilcox, is to form a 501c3 or obtain that status. They are a foundation, or rather a museum. That should help them getting that status, but that's something they need to do in order for them to be able to do some sort of a fundraiser for the Friends of Swart Wilcox to raise money from the community for this project. Their intent, as they stated to us, would be to donate that money to the city. Right now, the way that the city's Swart Wilcox Fund works, it's not funded by the general fund. It's funded either by donations or by interest earnings from an endowment that is not a city fund, but it's in community bank, and we get roughly $10,000 to $14,000 per year, depending on the interest rate. That funds their operating costs. The reserve that we took some $10,000 out of tonight for Swart Wilcox has around $100,000 in it now, less that $10,000. So essentially what the Friends of Swart Wilcox are aiming to do is build that reserve up through donations to the city that they are going to provide for the purposes of constructing or relocating this barn. Their timeline, obviously it really depends on how quickly they can get their 501c3 together and start their fundraising campaign, but they were hoping to do this relatively quickly over a 2-year period. I guess that remains to be seen what's feasible.
And so what they're looking for from council is a general sense of support or not, before they, proceed to get their 501c3 status, which they may do with or without, our support, but they just want an understanding of the overall level of support of council for this project.
With that, we'll turn to council. Yes, Lon?
I had a question about the 501c3. Maybe this is for David. I'm trying to understand how that ties in with the city. The city owns the land, the city owns the structure. Why do we need to go to a 501c3?
The city cannot solicit funds.
So it's just for
So we
fundraising?
can't, yeah, it's for fundraising purposes. It's just as there is a formal, I don't know if you're familiar with it, there's a Friends Foundation Library, which is a separate 501c3 corporation that raises money and contributes to them on a regular basis through their financial infrastructure. And historically, we have not had that process, and they came to us and said, listen, we've got this $600,000 project that we want to raise money for, and then Ginny and I were saying, well, that's great, but understand we can't do it on your behalf, and we can't just say, oh, and by the way, you can run $600,000 through the city. We just can't do that. So we talked to them about establishing a 501c3. They investigated it. Again, they do have a leg up because they are a state education department registered museum, which gives them charitable status, not for profit status in the state of New York, but not on a federal level. And although again, this is because I can't keep from saying things like this. You ask me a question, it's your fault. Anyone could still make a contribution to them, but if they were challenged by the IRS, the person who gave the money would have to prove to the IRS that the Friends of Sport Wilcox was in fact a valid and totally nonprofit organization compliant with the IRS rules. Almost every foundation, in order to maintain their foundation status in the state of New York, has as one of their provisions they can only provide grants to 501c3 entities.
Right.
So if they're going to go to somebody who has enough money to make a difference here, their charter says they can only give to a 501c3 status. So they're going through the process now, and it hasn't been done in the past because it just economically they were dealing with amounts of $500 or $1,000 or $3,000. This just ramps up a lot. But once they get it in place, and assuming that they maintain, the bookwork properly after that, they will then have a permanent mechanism in place for any future projects going forward. So they figured now is as good a time to do it as any.
Right. And I was there when Helen was giving her speech, but do they actually have a board that's formed that's going to stay in place? Because to create this 501c3, they're going to have a legitimate board in place.
Again, we'll get into the weeds here, but you can have an entity that's called an unincorporated association, and they are an unincorporated association. They make an application to IRS as an unincorporated association. Once they do that, they still have to have bylaws. They still have to have someone who's running it just as they are now. But they don't have to set up another layer of corporate status to do that. They can be a community organization. Once they do set it up, however, they will have to file regular statements with the IRS regarding all the money that's come in, all the money that's gone out. They also have to register with the New York State Charities Department. So it will raise the level of their operation significantly. But again, when you're starting to deal with this kind of money, it's very important that everybody play the game by the rules, and that's one of the rules.
Right, because it's definitely increasing their commitment
You bet.
to this.
You bet. And again, it just raises. Nobody cares when it's $1,000.
No.
When it's $500,000, $600,000, then all of a sudden everybody starts getting involved because of potential fraud and just responsibility for managing money.
Okay.
Subject to comptroller's audits and IRS audits, all those things.
Thank you.
So clarifying the barn, we're talking about, you said there's a gentleman that has a barn, we're talking about a traditional and historically appropriate barn, we're not talking about.
Yeah.
Then in terms of our support, is it the support of the entity of the 501c3? Or, I mean, and they're to solicit, they're to go out and find the funds to be able to pay for this barn as well?
That's their intent.
That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, in the future, it could be possible that they would be looking for a contribution from the city toward the project, but their intention is to raise as much money as possible. They have their eyes on that prize, for sure. For your first question, they, I think, are looking for the support of the council to move forward with this project on city property. And, do we think that at some point, we could conceive of financially supporting this project if it were necessary? Not the full amount, certainly, but, it may come to that. Just like with the FOF, the Greenway Trail, where they kind of gave us seed money and then we had to finish it because we believed in the project. So I think they're kind of looking for that sort of, the intent of our will. Do we want to see this project through? Do we find value in it, or not?
And if I could jump in on one other thing here. As you know, no one can force a gift on the city. We have to accept it. We have to agree, and any terms, any limitations has to come to the common council. And common council, just as we did tonight on accepting an anonymous donation. Someone can say, I'm giving you $1,000. We can say, we don't care, we don't want it.
Yeah.
So before they start going to donors, they want to make sure that the common council is in favor of the project conceptually, so that when they raise the money and say, okay, now we're going to buy a barn, and we're going to put it on the site, the common council says, well, wait a minute, we have no interest in doing that. Why would we accept that gift with those restrictions? So they're just looking to make sure that there's a blessing from the property owners as to the direction they're moving in, not to commit to anything particular.
That
Okay,
idea of
well-
someone forcing a gift on the city kind of is hilarious, though.
So Dave, you put it one way and Katie, you put it a different way. So let me
Okay.
just clarify what I'm hearing is the difference is that you said, do we support the project moving forward, putting the barn on city property and 501c3 status? My thinking is yes. And that was what Dave said as well. The second part of what you just said is that we might have to support in total this project at some time if they were not successful getting donations.
Oh, no, that's not what I intended to say. Okay, let me take what you heard and try to come back with it. So, just knowing that, their intention is to raise, and I'm not speaking for them, this is my understanding based on, the finance committee meeting, the amount of money that they have to raise in order to move this project forward. I think that it's realistic to expect that at some point in the future, there might have to be a contribution from the city in order to complete the project. I don't think that the intention of the Friends of the Sport Wilcox is to have the city put in any money. One of the points that Howard Reese made was that they have raised or, been funded by entirely the trust in the entire history of the museum. So they didn't come asking for money at all, but I think that it's just realistic to put out that, often when we have a project, someone wants to do something like this in the city, and it's at this scope, that there's generally, in my history, has been some contribution by the city. And so I want us to be just eyes open to that when we say, like, yes, we support this. And that's just me trying to be, pragmatic and not commit us to anything, but just that's something that I'm seeing, right? And I think too, the other point about someone's kind of forcing a gift is, if at that time we said, they had 90% and we didn't want to put in a 10% match or something, we could say like, no, we're not going to accept it, we're not going to go forward. It might not be nice, but we could certainly do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, we would cross that bridge when we got
Yeah.
there, yes.
I would
Yeah.
just add, just from my conversations with the Friends of Sport Wilcox, they had not brought up entirely through their fundraising efforts.
Right. Yeah, that was the impression they gave at the finance meeting as well.
So do we have any more discussion on this, or can we say that we've got a sense of council that we might be either in support or not in support of this?
I would be in support of this project.
How about you, Scott?
I'd be in support of it.
Yeah, I'm in support of it. I also, would love to see like some concept designs or if there's anything available as far as that nature right now, like what this might look like.
Yeah, Helen Rees has a brochure, a pamphlet
Oh, cool.
that she was handing out, so.
Great. Yeah, and I mean, regardless, I'm supportive of it.
Mark?
More curious.
Yeah, I mean, as it was framed, that support the project, there's no intention at this point of us throwing funding. I certainly support that.
And Katie?
Yeah, yes.
Good. Well, I think we can report back to them on that, and they'll be happy.
Yes.
All right, we have item number 18 for discussion, 7th Ward Council member vacancy. I'd like to see if we can take care of that right now. I want to tell you that gentleman who, upon retiring from a 30-year career as a system integrator specializing in land use, moved to Oneonta back in 1997 and became involved in community politics just a few years later when former Mayor Kim Muller asked him to join the Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals. A few years later, after that, Mayor John Nader appointed him to the Zoning Code Rewrite Committee. In 2014, he worked with the city attorney to draft over a dozen local laws, most of them tax incentives designed to attract homeowners and developers to the city. And just around that time, he joined the Planning Commission. And he served in leadership roles on both the ZBA and the Planning Commission. And his name is Overbay. And he is my nominee for the 7th Ward vacancy. Folks,
Cool.
thoughts?
Does he know what he's getting in for?
I think he does. I think I spent a good long length of time describing what he was going to get into, and Ed, you were willing to take that on. Do you want to take a couple of seconds here or minutes with the council?
Well, my understanding is it's an interim position. I don't know that I'd volunteer for a 4-year term, but I would like to honor John by filling out his term.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. With that, then, if everybody is of the same mind, I actually have a motion that I can read, and we can have ourselves a full complement of council members. And that motion reads as follows. Thank you very much, Carrie. Motion that the Common Council approves the following resolution. Whereas, because of the resignation of Common Council member John Rafter, effective June 14, 2023, there exists a vacancy for the position of council member, 7th Ward. And whereas the mayor, pursuant to the provisions of the Section C23 of the city charter, is given the power and directed therein to appoint a person to fill that vacancy until the next general election, subject to the approval of the Common Council. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor hereby appoints Edmund Overbay to fill that vacancy during the unfulfilled term of Ward 7 Councilmember John Rafter, and the Common Council concurs with that appointment. This appointment will expire December 31st, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, followed by Mark. And further discussion? Yes?
Was there a clarification when it started? Didn't hear that.
It starts today. It'll
Yeah.
start basically tomorrow. So, and then roll through to the end of the year. So five
tomorrow. Okay.
yes. So 5 months and change.
I was wondering if we could untable something, but I guess we
I know, and also you have stuck it out in that really uncomfortable bench, and we
Right.
have a much
We have a nicer chair for you.
So,
All right, well, so we've had a first and a second, and
Wait a minute, Mark, you could amend that. Unless that lawyer back there says no to it, you could amend this and say that it happens July 6th. You'd have to swear him in. If you really wanted to untable that, but I think Greg said it doesn't really,
If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I just was curious.
I don't think that SUNY contract gets screwed up, does it?
I don't think it started
So we
We're in good shape.
OBT contract.
We just soon have some time for this to marinate, right? So with that, we have our first, we have our second, we've had our discussion, it sounds like, and can we take, roll?
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Lepardue?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Yes.
We very much look forward to having you join us over these next 5.5 months.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
The
much.
feeling is mutual, as my next door neighbor likes to say.
All right, so with that, now we go to additional business. Do we have any additional business for council or council discussion? We don't. Have we any correspondence?
You have one item, was delivered to Councilmember Carson, who's asked that it be read into the record. It is a petition to the City of Oneonta Mayor and common council members. Given the historical significance, location, functional potential, and beauty of the previous Stella Luna restaurant, Oneonta Railroad Station, we urge that members of the common council seriously consider its purchase and use as a transit hub and for other purposes. It would be a tragedy if this facility and adjacent property were not utilized in a way that would benefit long-term interests of the City of Oneonta. We know financial concerns are paramount in planning Oneonta's future, but we also believe there are potential savings which could be achieved if that facility is acquired and renovated accordingly. Members of the Common Council should prioritize the future use of the former railroad station as it looks for ways to minimize the costs associated with a new transit hub and a parking garage that both meet Oneonta's future needs. Thus, as citizens, we implore members of the Common Council to examine the acquisition and utilization of this historic property as part or all of the Oneonta Transit Hub being planned for the future of the city of the hills that we all care about. It has
Actually,
signatures on each page.
Yeah, there's 5 signatures per page, so there's 10 people that signed it.
It'll be scanned to your email.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think we're gonna be having more of those coming.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, and that's what we promised. We're gonna take this slowly, we're gonna do this correctly, which would be the expectation. We're gonna do this as transparently as possible and make certain that we not only have our own consensus, but as much as we can, the buy-in of the community. So I appreciate those sorts of petitions, and I'll look forward to more of that. With that, we do have a,
I wonder if I could just maybe say something in regards to that, because I know that it hasn't been using that building hasn't not been considered by the city and by this council. And, I have had people come to me as a board representative talking about how that should be used. However, I know that, based on the assessment from Wendell, that the property isn't really, fit, or it's not large enough, to accommodate the amount of transit that people should have at this transit hub. But I wonder if, given that it is an historical structure, given that we maybe have that we also have this new board for historical structures now here in the city, that perhaps the city might consider ways of utilizing that building and purchasing it for something that, can benefit us, maybe getting some grants or getting something and coming up with another solution. So if it is in the transit hub, it doesn't, maybe it would be maybe it would be beneficial to us.
so as the charter allows me this, I'm going to end up wanting to put that on our agenda sometime within probably these next 3 council meetings. So it might be the first or the second council meeting in August for us to have a robust discussion around the use of the former Stella Luna's, the former train station.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Scott?
Whatever happened to the idea of having the workshop? You said a while ago that on before John left the council, he made a suggestion of having a workshop where we could get together.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point between everything going on with the parking garage and some of the other stuff that's coming forward to us. I think a workshop would be really beneficial, especially with Ed coming on board,
I think there'd be a consensus around that, and it's just a matter of strategizing. We've talked a little bit about how we do that and maintain our adherence to the open meetings laws that we all embrace. So I think that's something, I think that's a conversation that we should spend maybe some time on, again, as long as we're talking about agendas, that we spend maybe a little bit of time, even as early as our next meeting, talking about at least bare bones of how that might work. And we'll talk with our city attorney about what we need to do to make certain that we are absolutely working within the expectations of the law. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Does it make that?
Yeah,
sound
no,
right?
I was just curious, 'cause I didn't
Yeah, no,
know.
it hasn't gone anywhere outside of those preliminary conversations that we've had, both internally and in council. But I think it's valuable, and I think John would be thrilled to know that that suggestion was moving forward. So, so let's plan to do that. Okay. We do have a need for an executive session. Dave, you can probably better phrase how we get into that than I. It's a matter of personnel. Maybe that's enough. I know what it is. Oh, I thought you did.
To the employment of a particular person.
Employment of a particular person, we can go with that. All right, so I need a motion to go into executive session. Mark, followed by Katie. All in favor? Aye. And with that, we will go into executive session. Thank you, folks, for your attendance